Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the longest study on human happiness ever conducted just to figure out what actually builds a good life. You know, for decades, we've been fed this very specific cultural narrative about what we're supposed to chase to be happy and healthy. But today, we're going to toss all that out and rely entirely on the hard data to unpack the truth. So, let's get into it.
Let me start off by asking you a pretty provocative question. What if literally everything our culture teaches us about chasing success and health is completely backwards? I mean, think about the things you probably focus on every single day to optimize your life. We're talking your diet, your career goals, your gym routine. But what if the absolute strongest predictor of your future health isn't something you can easily measure on a medical chart?
Well, here's our first massive shocker. Your relationship satisfaction at age 50 predicts your health at age 80 far better than your cholesterol levels do. Just sit with that for a second. We spend so much energy tracking biological markers, right? Checking blood pressure, tracking genetics, we measure and we medicate, but there's literally no statin you can take for a lonely marriage. The researchers originally assumed that the hard science stuff, genetics, medical interventions, would totally dominate long-term health. But actually, how connected you feel to other people in midlife matters exponentially more.
To really understand why this happens, we have to rewind all the way back to 1938. That's when Harvard researchers started something completely unprecedented by tracking a group of college sophomores. Now think about it. Most research projects struggle to keep people engaged for a few weeks. People move away, they lose interest, they just stop returning calls. But this team, they kicked off a project that defied all the odds.
For 85 continuous years, scientists tracked every measurable variable you could possibly imagine. We're talking IQ scores, income levels, physical health markers, even brain scans. They drew blood, they interviewed the participants' wives, and eventually their kids. 2 entire generations of scientists literally dedicated their lives to this single question of what actually makes a good life, making sure to control for every confounding factor out there.
Following these folks through every single stage of life, from teenagers to midlife all the way into their senior years, the researchers found something incredibly consistent. The quality of a person's relationships eclipsed their genetics, their wealth, and their achievements. Every single time. They watched careers skyrocket and marriages fall apart. And the data told a very clear story. The people who optimized purely for achievement, totally sacrificing their relationships along the way, often reached the very top of their fields, made tons of money, and yet, by their own admission, felt completely hollow.
So, the bottom line is that people who prioritized their family bonds and their friendships actually stayed healthier, they lived longer, and they even experienced less mental decline. And we're not just talking about a slight emotional boost here. Happy marriages actively protected people against the emotional toll of physical pain. The immune systems of highly connected people literally function better. The absolute, undeniable conclusion from nearly a century of data is that good lives are built on good relationships.
Section 1. The Loneliness Crisis, a Biological Emergency.
Okay, we need to look at the dark side of this data for a minute. Because chronic loneliness isn't just a bad mood, it's a literal public health crisis. We have this really bad habit of treating loneliness like it's just a personality trait, right? We call people loners or we say they just prefer solitude, kind of brushing it off as a phase. But your biology strongly disagrees. The hard data shows that the mortality risk of chronic loneliness is roughly equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It directly rivals alcoholism. I mean, think about how we treat smoking. We have warning labels, massive public health campaigns, huge social stigma. We built entire systems to stop people from lighting up because we know it kills. And yet, we almost completely ignore loneliness, even though it carries that exact same lethal power.
What's truly wild about this is how it proves the human body literally cannot distinguish between physical threats and social ones. When you're isolated, your body breaks down so much faster. Chronic disconnection floods your system with cortisol, the stress hormone. It triggers widespread inflammation, it suppresses your overall immune function. In that 85-year study, the loneliest participants showed accelerated cognitive decline. Basically, their bodies broke down faster and their minds just followed suit.
Section 2. The Universal Regret, Lessons from the End of Life. When the researchers sat down with the surviving participants in their 80s and asked them what they regretted most in life, not a single person, literally not one, said they wished they'd spent more time at the office. Nobody said, man, I really wish I'd climbed higher up the corporate ladder, or I wish I made more money. Instead, the universal regret across the board was always about relationships. I wish I hadn't let that friendship drift. I wish I had been more present. Over and over, they heard things like, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids, or I wish I'd been a better partner. It was this heartbreaking realization from people at the very end of their lives, recognizing they had poured their time and energy into all the wrong buckets.
So what this study actually gives us is an early warning system for regret minimization. It's practically begging you to stop and ask, what choices today would your 80-year-old self thank you for? The deathbed is definitely not where you want this realization to finally click. This data is basically a sneak peek at the regrets you haven't even earned yet, giving you a chance to change your trajectory right now.
Section 3. Social fitness. Reimagining relationship maintenance.
To make sure we don't end up with those same regrets, we have to completely shift our mindset. We need to start treating our connections as a daily practice that requires constant upkeep. The researchers call this social fitness, and it totally changes how you view your everyday interactions. Think about physical fitness, right? You wouldn't go to the gym one time, do a single push-up, and declare yourself fit for the rest of your life. Friendships are not static achievements either. You can't just bench press your way to a best friend. We totally get this when it comes to our bodies. We schedule workouts, we meal prep, but for some reason, we treat friendships like a destination. Made a friend, check, moving on. And then we wonder why feeling connected gets so much harder as we age and why our close friends suddenly feel like strangers.
When you look at the 5 core dimensions of well-being, relationships are sitting right there dead center, and there's a reason for that. When your connections are strong, literally everything else in your life gets easier to handle. The research shows these 5 dimensions constantly bouncing off each other. But relationships, they are the anchor. When your social connections are weak, your positive emotions drop. Your engagement, your sense of meaning, even your accomplishments, they all suffer. Think about it. You wouldn't skip the gym for 5 years and expect to stay strong. So why on earth do we skip reaching out to our friends for months and still expect to feel connected?
Section 4. The Wiser Framework. 5 Steps to Connection.
So, how do we actually exercise this social fitness on a practical level? Well, the researchers put together this brilliant framework for building emotional intelligence in our relationships. And the best part is, it's designed for everyday interactions, not just big crisis moments. It's called the Wiser Framework. Let's walk through it. First, watch. Most of us just sleepwalk through our emotional lives, so you have to actually notice when you're feeling isolated. Next, interpret. Try to understand those feelings without judging yourself too harshly. Feeling lonely doesn't mean you're pathetic, it's just a biological signal. Then, select. Remember, you have agency here. Choose vulnerability. Actually reach out instead of withdrawing. After that, engage. Half-hearted connection totally doesn't count. Being physically in the room while mentally scrolling through your phone is not engaging. And finally, reflect. Look back at the interaction to see what worked well, focusing on continuous improvement rather than self-criticism.
Because at the end of the day, relationships are absolutely not a destination. They are maintenance. The people in the 85-year study who truly flourished were the ones who paid attention, who adjusted, and who treated their relationships as a vital, lifelong skill worth mastering. They naturally did some version of this WISR framework every single day. They understood that you never really arrive at perfect relationships. You just commit to doing the maintenance.
I want to leave you with one final thought to really kickstart your own social fitness journey. What relationship are you letting slide today? And more importantly, what choice can you make right now, in this exact moment, that your future self will thank you for? Maybe it's just sending a quick text, picking up the phone, or scheduling a coffee date. The data is crystal clear, the choice is completely yours, and your 80-year-old self is definitely watching. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps you go out and build a truly good life.